Welcome to Issues That Matter. My guest today is John Amidon and Maureen Aumand, and they're going to talk about their peace conference that will be held next week in Fonda, New York. So, John, what's the theme of this year's conference?
Well, the title is What's Love Got to Do with It? We Need It to Survive.
Right.
So we certainly are emphasizing the idea that we better start learning how to, at the very least, treat each other with dignity and kindness.
Mhm.
And, if we can excel, we'll actually become a loving creature on this planet, as opposed to one who seems to be enamored with war. So we truly need to end war and militarism if we are to save our climate. And that is an imperative for all people on the planet Earth, on our lovely mother. So we've been working at this for years. I'd like to say that we were succeeding. We keep trying. And at a certain point in time, people will begin to understand that their pursuit of short-term profit and weapons sales and climatic destruction for material comfort is really going to be the end of humanity. So,
right. Maureen,
what do you have to say?
Well, Cynthia, John, basically said, we've been at this for years, and it almost looks as if things are worse right now than 26 years ago. Sometimes it feels that way. And so that kind of sub-theme to the theme that John is the overriding theme, that what motivates us is the fact that the only thing that will save us as a species is that we learn to be brother and sister and family to each other on this very small, vulnerable planet. But the other theme is that we have these seemingly intractable problems, like ongoing war in so many places right now on the planet, and in so many cases horrific, because now with social media, we can see day in and day out the absolute horror and cost of war. It's not something distant, it's present to us. We have the threat of nuclear destruction that's always there. And as governments again heat up nuclear arms race rhetoric anyway, and even policy, it becomes more real, that threat. We have the threat of climate collapse. And these things seem intractable. And so as with every year, the Kateri Conference invites people to come who are giving their total life's energy to facing and confronting and looking for solution to these intractable problems that that prevent us from truly realizing the absolute possibility of living in harmony and peace and brotherhood. So that's kind of the sub-theme: confronting and understanding and trying to deal with seemingly intractable, huge problems that confront us as a species.
On Thursday, Russell and I went to a friend's house in Cherry Valley, and my friend and his wife have a get-together every Thursday night with people, their neighbors, and they talk about this different issues and stuff. So there were about 5 or 6 sitting at the table, and I asked each one of them what was the most important issue facing Americans today. And not one of them said the threat of nuclear war, which really astounds me. People don't know how severe this problem is and how uninformed they are. It's sad.
What did they say?
pro-choice, basically pro-choice. And I thought to myself, well, okay, but if there's no war left, you don't have to worry about, pro-choice anymore. So that
Well, yeah, I was just surprised they didn't mention the climate since, I mean,
no,
pro-choice.
they didn't say that either.
Wow.
Yep.
You
Well,
know, I think that I even, looking back at my own sometimes failure to realize that, I have a responsibility to talk about and try to think through these issues, these mega issues, meta issues. I think sometimes they seem so overwhelming to people that, first of all, the media doesn't, because they're complex and our media deals with things so superficially, is avoid the real issues that are really complex, that really require serious thought and conversation and in-depth understanding. But I do think sometimes people are overwhelmed by these huge issues. And one of the things with this Kateri conference that I think, you always hope that more and more people will come who perhaps have never encountered people who really are confronting these issues, and to realize that everyday ordinary people, even though often the people who come to the Kateri conference have done extraordinary things or made extraordinary sacrifices to confront the issues, they're still ordinary people. And to realize that as citizens, both of this nation and of the planet, that we actually have the capacity to look at these issues and to talk about them and to influence at least attempt to influence our government. I think that people feel like it's beyond them. And I think the hope of the conference always is to make people realize that this is also part of our capacity and our responsibility as citizens, as human beings, as people who are like I often feel like, we're not going to probably change things in our lifetime. We probably won't see universal peace on earth. I won't before I die, but, by witnessing to the next generation. So being able to say, we're linked from past to future, and that, the hope that if young people see other human beings dealing with these issues, they will grow up knowing it's their responsibility.
I came up with a slogan, and my slogan is it's not 1944 anymore. The line in the sand for me is 1945 with the advent of the nuclear age. There were conflicts since the beginning of time, but once that bomb was dropped in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, that was the dividing line. And, there might be conflicts. There are conflicts today, but unlike in the past, the conflicts today can wipe out this entire planet. And that's pretty scary. So, John, who's going to be the speakers this year?
we have a really excellent array of very fine speakers. Probably the most famous person is Colonel Ann Wright. She's a retired Army colonel and a former U.S. State Department diplomat. And now she is an extraordinary activist for peace and justice, and worked, as a member of Justice for Peace and Code Pink. And she was an organizer of the recent Freedom Flotilla to Gaza. She certainly worked on creating peace in the Korean Peninsula, and just so many other aspects of this work that she's been involved in. And so we're delighted to have Ann back to the conference. We have Martha Hennessy, who's coming. She was a member of the Kings Bay Plowshare Action, a very important anti-nuclear protest. And for that, amongst other folks, she went to prison for several years at least. I'm not exactly sure of the amount of time, but at the moment, but she's also the granddaughter of Dorothy Day, and
Oh,
Catholic, and one of the granddaughters. So quite a remarkable person. Maureen, why don't you take the next two?
Well, Brian Terell, I mean, one of the things about Brian, who also, like Martha, is his activist tradition comes out of the Catholic worker movement founded by Dorothy Day, who would agree with you totally, Cynthia, about the fact that 1945 was a line in the sand. So Brian Terell lives on a farm in the Midwest with his wife, but also spends a huge amount of time traveling to conflict zones in order to both witness firsthand the impact and carnage of war, and also to meet with people from around the world, because I think sometimes we live in a bubble in the United States, and it's always good to remind ourselves that all over the world there are people advocating for peace who do realize that we have to work in order to avert the unthinkable. So Brian has traveled and lived in Afghanistan and Iraq and the Middle East, and he goes to Europe for conferences to meet with other peace activists. So he is both a witness for us who want peace with all our hearts, and also a witness for the people in those countries and conflict zones where he can bring back the information and the reality of what people are experiencing as a result of war. Vera Anderson, John, you might be able to explain a little more about Vera. Vera is a young singer and activist. John met her at the Nevada Desert Experience this past year. So John, that might be worth your filling that in a little bit, and then I can talk a little bit about Craw Radio.
Alrighty, yeah, Vera is just a lovely young woman who is presently studying in New York City of psychiatric or psychological counseling. And she's been an activist for many years, actually, protesting nuclear weapons at the Nevada National Security Site, formerly the Nevada Test Site. And she is a co-facilitator of Nevada Desert Experience with Brian, and sits on the board of Pace Bene. And she's just a wonderful performer, musician, singer, and will be entertaining us with a special rendition of What's Love Got to Do with It, her interpretation.
mm-hmm.
And then,
So
go ahead, John, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead, Marie.
And then Craw Radio, which may sound a little incongruous. And Brian, John, please remind me of the names of the two people. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Alan Winston and Rebecca McKean.
Alan is a professor in New York City and activist, and also someone who decided to take his communication skills and start something of an unusual podcast, with the idea that, like in a bar, when people get together comfortably over a drink and start talking about the things that matters to them, he would seek out people all over the world who have interesting stories and interesting passions, and try to elicit, from people personally what moves them to engage in the things they engage in. And he's become very interested, I think, partially through the Nevada Desert Experience that he's traveled to and interviewed people at, in peace activism. And so last year he joined us at the Kateri Conference. And this year, Craw Radio is going to actually moderate the Friday evening event and talk to all of our panelists again about what moves them. Why are they peace activists, and try to get a sense of the possibility and that choice for living one's life. So it's a really, and then during the day on Saturday, the plan is for Craw Radio to be interviewing different people who attend the conference, again, to see why they're there and to get, like you did the other night, Cynthia, over the dinner table, a sense of what it is that's troubling people, moving them, how they confront the intractable problems that seem to surround us. John, I don't know, is there anything else about Craw Radio that I'm leaving out?
No, I think that covers it pretty well. Our last speaker is Brad Wolf, and he's a former lawyer and a prosecutor and a community college dean, and now he's executive director of Peace Action Network in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And he's co-coordinated the Merchants of Death War Crimes Tribunal. He's certainly interested in and has extensive knowledge on Phil Bergen, and his book, A Ministry of Risk, was published by Fordham University on Phil Bergen. So he's also worked on the Atomic Bombings Tribunal, 1945 atomic bombings, excuse me. So anyway, he's just quite an amazing man, and he will be joining us. He's new to the conference, but we're really excited about having Brad coming too.
Yeah, and there's kind of a link through him to last year's conference. John referenced the fact that he came to us through Kathy Kelly, really, who talked about his work on the War Crimes Tribunal. Basically, Kathy Kelly and a number of other activists who came last year to the conference to talk about this effort have, looking for root causes of why we constantly embrace militarism and why we have a war economy and why we don't even make that a top priority. Is that basically those who make money, the manufacturers of weapons, are such a driving force both in our Congress and within our society. And so they created a tribunal basically to isolate the various conflicts that plague us and have plagued us in recent history, and to see the relationship of those who manufacture weapons to the driving force of war. And Kathy recommended Brad, saying that he was a driving force in that effort, and so he's a link to last year, and also a link to Kathy Kelly, who I know you've interviewed often, Cynthia, and who has often come to the Kateri Peace Conference. So yes, I know I'm looking forward to hearing him speak.
So
I'd also want to say,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
Well, another important aspect of the conference is we have designed breakout groups, small breakout groups, where our presenters will lead small groups in conversation. But this is really designed to have an opportunity to talk and with our attenders, and also to have them share their thoughts, which are quite important to us in the whole process. And then there will be a report back on small groups. So this part of the conference is really exciting to us also. I mean, it is to me, because then we get to have these small group conversations, and everybody has an opportunity to share their ideas and give the input that they'd like to give. And the other thing that's really, go ahead.
No, go ahead, John. No, what I was going to say is to follow up on what John is saying. It's always been important to us to structure things so that the last conversation of the day is between the presenters and the people attending about solutions, so that the hope is always that people will leave the Kateri Conference motivated and with some ideas of what they can do personally in their lives to move forward the peace agenda. and to act with more motivated love for each other and for the planet and for our future, our sustainability and future existence. So the hope always is out of the conversations will come some notion of solutions and ways to confront those things that seem impossible. So I think John, you're right, to make sure that we, underscore that it is a conversation. The other thing is that because of that, I think, it's really important for me to say that maybe one of the longings, one of the underscoring motivations of keeping this conference going that John started 26 years ago, is basically to reach out, and the hope always is, the longing always is that more people will come, that people will see this not for some little elite group, that gets together every year in this beautiful idyllic spot and has a conversation, but that it's always open to anyone who's at all interested in looking at solutions for those things that plague us as a planet, as a nation. So the hope always is that doing an interview like this, Cynthia, that more people will come and more people will become part of the conversation and bring their wisdom and their passion and their desire for a different way of organizing our lives to the conference.
Will it be hybrid? Will you have a video as you go along with it, out live? So people maybe in other parts of the country who can come to New York might be able to see what you're doing.
Maybe we'll have a video. I mean, we try to do recordings. We're not doing Zoom presentation for a variety of different reasons, but
Okay.
We often do videos, and that's somewhat dependent on how they turn out, as you know, with video. Sometimes you don't get the audio you want when you're working live, or even the visual. Visuals are usually easier.
The technical challenges.
It's really important to, yeah. I mean, part of what is lacking with Zoom presentations is being face to face with a real person in rather than an electronic shadow. I mean, you can reach out and touch that person. You can feel the energy from that person in a way that simply isn't available when we're on a TV screen or a computer screen. So, we really like doing in-person events, and that's one of the things that's kept it going in a very meaningful way. It builds community in a way that you can do partially, on video presentations or Zoom, but not in the same way. You can't sit down and break bread. You can't, really eat together. And we have splendid lunch planned, as we always do. And you won't feel or see the beauty of the shrine. And the shrine, the context is one that encourages people to relax. They get there and they relax. Even though we're doing very serious conversations, there's still, it's done in the context of nature and the trees and and all of the sun, the flowers. I mean, it's just a beautiful place. So that's part of the conference, and that also doesn't come across in a Zoom presentation.
Yeah, on the other hand, Cynthia, in the past, especially during COVID and post-COVID for a while, we took advantage of the technical capacity of World Beyond War, and I think the trying to do something hybrid with a large number of speakers with them is a little challenging technically. But if your listeners are interested in pursuing the wide range of concerns around the country and the world of people gathering to talk about these issues, looking at the World Beyond War site and all of the Zoom conferences they hold every day. It looks like, when you go to their calendar, that's very inspiring and allows people to know that their concerns are shared by human beings all over the country, all over the planet. So, there is that possibility too for people seeking ways of having conversations about these issues that plague us.
So,
That's true. I'm sure. I mean, I didn't want to minimize the impact of meeting online or Zoom presentations either. I mean, there's certainly some extraordinary advantages, and the amount of people you can reach becomes enormous. It has the potential to be enormous. So that too is something that we certainly recognize.
so it's for 2 days. It's next Friday and next Saturday. Can you give us the dates and where it will be?
Yeah, it's September 13th and 14th. Friday, it starts at 5:30 p.m. with a potluck. It will be at the St. Kateri National Shrine in Fonda, New York. And then that's exit 28 on the New York State Thruway. It's where Fonda will be found. And
Okay.
it's important. Anybody can come to this conference for free. Now, we do have expenses, and we certainly appreciate donations because, as I said, we do have expenses. But we also, it's always been a labor of love. And we've always made it available to anybody who, if you don't have money or if it's stress to afford it, that's okay. We're not. We've always managed to pay our bills. So, and the people who do come are usually quite generous too.
Maureen?
And then Saturday, the conference begins at 9. Usually we provide the opportunity for coffee and some kind of light breakfast for people who, arrive early. And basically the schedule is online in detail, as well as biographies of the speakers at KateriPeaceConference.org. If people are new to this conference, the website also contains archives that are searchable. You get a sense of what has driven us and the issues that we've been discussing all these years. I think it's a wonderful website. Local activist Steve Wickham, computer expert, helps us maintain this. And I think, just looking at KateriPeaceConference.org, you get a strong sense of what's happening next weekend, and then basically what's happened in the past. Also, I want to mention for those listeners who might be interested in going to Pat Beadle's memorial service at 4 in Albany, we deliberately structured the conference so people will be able to leave at 3 to get there. And I know that's of concern for some people. I don't know if we have any more time, Cynthia.
Yeah, we have time.
Okay, and John's heard this over and over again, and it may be my English teacher poetic leanings or something, but one of the things that has come to be very meaningful to me, this is a Catholic shrine that's dedicated to a Native American woman, and it's really adjacent to one of the most archaeologically studied Mohawk villages in New York State. And it's very easy to take a walk through the woods where those native early residents of Fonda, before it was Fonda, would have walked and go to the site of the village. And for me, there's a presence there of these people, of the First Nations. And it strikes me every year that when they confronted the effect of warring European powers on their land, war, being driven by greed and power hunger and blindness and militarism, the same forces that drive war today, they had to meet. They had something called the meeting at the edge of the woods when there was an important issue to be discussed. And so it always strikes me that we're doing the same thing that the first peoples had to do as they gathered to say, how do we confront these things that seem to threaten our very existence and that interfere with our capacity to live in loving harmony with each other? And so I think for those who say, well, why a Catholic shrine? I think that that sense of first peoples and the struggles that war bring and militarism and Dr. King is often a driving framework for us, both militarism and materialism and I'm losing it, John.
Oh, well,
the triplicates of that Dr. King warned us of, those racism, right? Which, right. And yes. And so those same forces, we're confronting. And so to me, it's a very, it has a spiritual energy, this place that I think really fosters, as John said, the conversations and the sense of community that people always seem to leave with, and that brings people back, and that hopefully brings new people.
Mm-hmm. The other reason why a Catholic shrine, when I started this conference, I was working on closing the U.S. Army School of the Americas, and people being killed primarily in Latin America were indigenous folks, the Indians of the various countries, Mayans in Guatemala, for example, and Catholics. And so when I came home to work on this issue, I looked for a place where the indigenous intersected with Catholicism. And Saint Kateri is also the saint of ecology, so a very important issue of our day, the climate. So, and the relationship worked very well, so we stayed there. We haven't, when we focus on this conference, we focus on the quality of the day, and that is our primary focus. And we haven't been deeply concerned about numbers. Of course, we'd like people to attend and more people than we have, but we haven't been deeply concerned about money. We don't make any money doing this. We do it as a service, and because it is an imperative if the world and humanity is actually going to continue on this planet in have a reasonable environment to live in. I mean, it is that serious a situation that we are presently in. So there are a lot of good reasons to be at the shrine, and the spiritual forces, as whether you believe in them or not, you will certainly feel them. And it's just a wonderful place. So we certainly want to invite everybody to come, whatever nationality, whatever religion, whatever whatever preferences you have, you are invited. So,
Maureen, final thoughts?
Well, again, we deliberately chose the word intractable, and it's very easy to lose hope or a sense of the possibility when, war, the horrific wars that we currently have, surrounding our spirits, and knowing that on this small vulnerable planet, our brothers and sisters, many of them are suffering horribly. But at the same time, when you come together with other human beings who long deeply in their hearts for a world beyond war, it does renew your sense of possibility and your commitment to work a little harder, to believe a little more fully in the possibilities of change, and to reach to the future with that hope and possibility, so that the drive to living in a sustainable, peace-filled world will become more and more a reality. So I think it feeds the spirit, both the place and the community and the conversations. And I'm looking forward to that for myself.
One final question, and I think that it's pretty important. The fact that war today is horrific. The prospect of a nuclear holocaust is beyond horrific. Do you think a lot of people think to themselves, this is so horrible that it's so horrible it won't happen? Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, certainly nuclear war is a possibility, and what people are thinking, honestly, a lot of young people don't even know we have nuclear weapons at this point. And why is that? Because it's not on TV, it's not in the media.
Right.
And I find that astounding, but I learned that when I was asked by a computer expert, a young person, whether we still had nuclear weapons. So
Wow.
I was really shocked that there is a lack of awareness, but then it makes sense in a way, because if you are hooked into mainstream media, you are watching heavily censored news in so many aspects, and you really won't know all of what you need to know. Another thing I just wanted to say very quickly, one of my inspirations is Father Dan Berg, and he was so extraordinary in all of his efforts to create peace. And one saying he had, and maybe I'm attributing the quote to him at the moment, but the quote I'm thinking of is civil disobedience isn't the problem, civil obedience is. And what that really boils down to is the fact that so many people are willing to conform so readily for material comfort and security, that they give up freedom, they give up the capacity to think even, and they just go along, even though on certain levels they know this isn't right. So why I'm bringing that up is because that willingness to conform is something we need to resist at this point, given the quality and directions that our country and our government has taken.
Final thoughts, Maureen?
Well, I'm still also, I agree with John, but I also was thinking about your question, and I do think sometimes, to think about people going about their daily life in Hiroshima, for example, on the day the bomb ultimately was dropped on them. Not a human being there could anticipate the unthinkable. What's happening in Gaza is unthinkable. And even though the people who live there have been undergoing awful repression and oppression for a very long time, what's happened is unthinkable. But the unthinkable over and over and over again in history happens. And so I think that it's important to raise the question that you're raising, Cynthia, that we have to be able to confront the fact that the unthinkable is possible, and then we have to try to prevent it from happening with that kind of deeper clarity and deeper community and deeper commitment to changing the dynamics that lead to the absolute impossible.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Maureen. You've been listening to John Amidon and Maureen. Oh my God, Amand. And they've been talking about their peace conference that's going to be held on the 13th and 14th of September. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Issues That Matter. If you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks, John. Thank you, Maureen. And thank you for everybody for listening.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.